MCAT 2017 Cram, Critical Analysis and Reasoning Skills, Flashcard Set 10.1, What Separates Science from Art? The question that follows the reading of this passage is a Foundations of Comprehension question. And as you view the passage, you'll notice some selected highlights of text. What I want you to do is garner meaning from these specific selections in order to answer the questions that follow, okay? And when you get to these questions, you'll be required to demonstrate that you know how to accurately summarize the central theme of the passage and interpret word choices made by the author. So good luck and happy reading. Paragraph 1. I believe the best understanding of the difference between science and art in the 19th century is to be found in a man who was not an artist but a rationalist. The scientist and writer Thomas Henry Huxley argued that the intellectual content of art is altogether different from the intellectual content of science. In art, it is truth to nature, but this truth is relative, for it depends entirely upon the intellectual culture of the person to whom the art is addressed. No man ever understands Shakespeare until he is old, though the youngest man may admire him, the reason being that he satisfies the artistic instinct of the youngest and harmonizes with the ripest and richest experiences of the oldest. In science, intellectual content is true to fact, and the deductions and generalizations which can be made from the fact. Paragraph 2. The pleasures, however, that one receives from either art or science, Huxley said, have a common source. These pleasures arise from the satisfaction one receives in tracing the central theme of whatever he is interested in at the moment in all its endless variations as it appears and reappears to demonstrate the truth of unity in variety, whether it be a problem in mathematics, an experiment in morphology, a chess game, a primitive drawing, a sophisticated painting, a simple ballad, a complex poem, a homely refrain, or a fugue, which is a contrapuntal composition in which a short melody or phrase, the subject, is introduced by one part and successively taken up by others and developed by interweaving the parts. Okay, so that's some type of, I don't know, classical music thingamajig. So, a fugue by Bach, the process of comprehending the symbols used to express the idea is both intellectual and aesthetic. The process is intellectual because it is the intellect which comprehends the laws governing any particular science or art, and it is aesthetic because it is the feelings which determine the amount of emotional pleasure one can derive from them. But the ends of the two are different. Science has at its end the attainment of truth. Art has for its end the attainment of pleasure. The subjects of all knowledge are divisible into two groups, said Huxley, matters of science and matters of art. For all things with which the reasoning faculty alone is occupied come under the province of science, and in the broadest sense, and not in the narrow and technical sense in which we are now accustomed to use the word art, all things feelable, all things which stir our emotions, come under the term art. Paragraph 3. I believe science is slowly destroying art. It can be said that science has created a hard, materialistic philosophy of life. If it destroyed art only, that would not be so bad, but science also destroys the highest aspirations of the human soul. Love is reduced to a biologic law. Family relationships are explained by psychology. Ideas are resolved into the yearnings of frustration, and God is metamorphosed into a tribal deity. Once the veil of that mystery Once the veil of mystery that enshrouds these great primary instincts of the human soul is ruthlessly snatched away, life loses the qualities which have made it beautiful and significant in the past. Despair takes the place of hope, resignation takes the place of resolution, sex takes the place of love, atheism takes the place of religion, wise and intelligent men become cynics, and common men become hedonists. Duty and morality are forgotten in the mad struggle to forget a life thus deprived of the ideas which before had made it endurable. To eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge can be as disastrous today as it was ages ago in the Garden of Eden. According to Huxley, the pleasure derived from science compares with the pleasure derived from art in the following way. A. True pleasure is derived only from art and not from science. B. There are distinct types of pleasure that one derives from either science or art. C. Science offers intellectual pleasure, while art offers aesthetic pleasure. Or D. The type of pleasure offered by both science and art are similar, if not the same. Definitely press pause if you need to. Open up a second window to view the selections of text that will support the selection of the correct answer choice. I'll give you a moment to think. All right. This is made by the author in order to recognize an accurate summary of the theme of pleasure derived from art and science, okay? So Huxley believed that while science has the ultimate goal of attaining truth, art has the ultimate goal of serving pleasure. This suggests a difference in how pleasure relates to goals, but not necessarily a difference in pleasure itself. Option 1, and that's like answer choice A, is incorrect because paragraph 2 states that science and art both invoke pleasure. Okay? The passage also explicitly states in paragraph 2 that the pleasures, quote, that one receives from either art or science, Huxley said, have a common source. So this disqualifies answer choice B. And finally, both art and science, Huxley believed, offer intellectual as well as aesthetic pleasure. So answer choice C is wrong as well, leaving only answer choice D, and this is going to be our correct selection. So the type of pleasure offered by both art and science are similar, if not the same. And if you want the support for this, something to this effect was mentioned in the passage. Okay? All right. Which of the following cannot be inferred from the passage? The author believes that A, science is a large source of immorality in society. It is incompatible with religion. B, science and art have nothing in common. C, both science and art are great sources of pleasure for members of society. D, art is less destructive than science since it does not over-explain certain human experiences. Definitely press pause if you need to, and I'll give you a moment to think. If you're having difficulty answering, you may want to open up a second window to peruse the passage and find the text support for selecting the correct answer choice. All right. All right, so what we have to do here is basically interpret word choices made by the author in the passage. And let's start. In paragraph 3, the author argues that science is, quote, slowly destroying art, as well as the, quote, highest aspirations of the human soul. The author goes on to explain that love, relationships, ideas, and beliefs, belief in a higher power, are all examples of human experiences that are made less meaningful through the mechanical lens of science. Okay. The author also says that the duty and morality are forgotten as part of science and makes a moral judgment about whether science makes people less religious. All right? So this can be inferred. The author argues that the over-explication, explication meaning the process of making something clearer through explaining it, makes life less bearable so that people forget duty and morality, and argues that people become less moral because science basically rejects religion. In other words, the author seems to argue that science, in contrast to art, removes the mystery from life that gives people a higher sense of moral duty through over-explication. Okay? So this is also inferred or can be inferred. The notion that science and art have nothing in common is actually contradicted by the passage, which clearly states that they are both intellectual and both sources of pleasure. So this means that answer choice C can be inferred, while obviously answer choice B cannot. The correct answer choice is answer choice B. Science and art have nothing in common. This is an extreme and it's just wrong. It can't be inferred, therefore it's the correct answer.